Hi, this is Jim Hendren with Common Ground, Arkansas. Today we're here to talk about something that's on the front page of every paper and on everybody's mind, and that's what's going on in Afghanistan. We're not here today to point fingers or to assign blame. There's plenty of people doing that. We're here to find out what can we do to help those in need, and how can we better understand what's going on in Afghanistan. So joining me today to discuss this issue, I have somebody who grew up in Afghanistan and now lives here in Northwest Arkansas. Khalid, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you being willing to share your experiences.
Thank you, Jim. So I was born when Russians were in Afghanistan, and then continued through the Civil War, and then when the Taliban came. It was I kind of reliving it from afar at this time, because I was just beginning to learn English at that time. That one evening. The classes I was taking the course, they asked us to go up on the roof and take off the sign because the Taliban were coming. And just like that, Kabul fell into the hands of Taliban. And then the very next day, they started implementing the strictest law. And then the next morning we woke up and there were Taliban pickup trucks going in the street.
So at that time, were there girls in school with you, and were they then allowed not to come?
So we didn't have girls, but our instructors were female teachers. And what happened was 80% of our instructors were female, and they couldn't come to class.
So you lost 80% of the instructors because they were women, and women were not allowed to teach?
No, they were not. And
so who filled all that, and did the education fall?
The male instructors were kind of stepping in and trying to fill up this gap. But I think it never filled that gap. They never could. It was impossible because you're cutting 50% of population, and when it comes to education, the majority of them were women.
So obviously that's what people think about first living under Taliban control, is the oppression of women and girls. What about religion? Is there freedom to worship how you want under Taliban, or is it forbidden?
The minorities, the Shia minorities, they suffered the most because they were a different sect of Islam. And even Taliban's interpretation of Islam, it was such a harsh and extreme that even your common person who was a regular Muslim, they did not fit that standard. The first day they announced that they would have men should start growing beard, and then I remember my dad was just getting rough, and their friends were coming together, and it's like, oh, we need to meet each other because sooner or later we would not recognize each other. And then lo and behold, that was the law.
So the law was that men had to grow the beards?
Yeah. And the punishment for that was you'd go to prison.
If you didn't have a beard, you went to prison. Now, do you expect that kind of law to return with the Taliban seizing control 20 years later? Again, it's a foggy time right now, so you don't know how they're going to implement. Right now, they're trying to figure things out on the ground. But I reject the Taliban 2.0, that they're better, because their stories don't match. Just last week, they were committing atrocities against journalists, but now all of a sudden, the change of heart. So you've lived under the Taliban, and you reject this public face that they're trying to portray, that they're going to be different, that they're going to allow women to go to school, and they invite women to participate, and they're not going to take retaliation against those who aided the Allied countries. You think that's just a show?
That's a show.
Can you explain some of the ways, for instance, I know your mom was involved in helping some girls learn, but doing that under Taliban rule, how it would be different versus what it was like for the last 20 years?
During the Taliban time, my mom decided to teach these girls and our neighbors, and what she was doing is setting time for them two at a time to come from a front door or back door and they were studying, and then they were leaving, and then the next group was coming. So 8 or 10 students a day, but different times, so switching times.
What would have happened had the Taliban know she was doing that?
Worst, I don't know.
Imprisonment?
Well, there was no imprisonment for that time for women, but I think my dad would have been in prison for allowing this to happen. Because the restriction was so many. Like just growing beard for me, the little bit I had was I went to prison for it. Listening to music, I went to prison for it. I'm just personally been to prison 4 times.
You've been to prison?
Yes. 4 times. Music, hair, beard.
Obviously, a lot of veterans in the United States today are struggling with seeing the images of the Taliban in the palace and overrunning Kabul and areas that they've served and fought and lost some of their brothers and sisters in that country. And they're asking themselves today, was it worth it? Why did we do it? And I guess what I'd ask you to explain is, so this 20-year period, you lived under the Taliban, and then you saw 20 years where the United States supported the Afghan government as they attempted to bring these reforms. What differences did you see? What was it a change in quality of life, in healthcare, in opportunity because of what the United States' involvement and the other allied countries' involvement in Afghanistan brought over this last 20 years?
The change was, again, Afghanistan did not start from zero. It started from minus something. And by the time we got to zero, it took a while. The progress has been significant. Again, there was no infrastructure left there. So that's why when I say start from zero, was if there, at least there was some infrastructure.
They'd been at war for decades.
Before I was born.
Right.
So it took a long time, but progress takes time. And so things moved. Girls were able to go to school. The aid organization started to invest in education and healthcare. The infant mortality rate dropped by 50% or so. The girls, half of the population, were able to go back to school. The clinics were there. The roads were built. So there was a lot of progress. And I'm sitting there as an example of that. And just like me, thousands of other people. The civil society, we had probably one of the active civil societies in the region. The media, it was amazing how much compared to surrounding countries. We had the freedom of media was just the helm of the progress.
So let's talk about one of the narratives that's out there, that the United States needed to withdraw all of our forces because the Afghan army wouldn't fight. I know your dad was in the Afghan army. Tell us your experience and thoughts on that narrative.
That's not true. I think the Afghan army were the front line of all this war. Afghan army, the last few years, they've lost more than closer to 70,000 soldiers to this war. So I push back against that Afghans were not fighting. They were fighting, but at the same time, you're fighting an organization that are supported by outsiders, the neighboring countries, and other entities that are using Afghanistan as a field to go and fight. Sometimes it's very offensive when I hear that Afghans did not fight. They did. I have family friends and I have family members who are part of the Afghan National Army, and they were fighting. They were dedicated to go and fight the Taliban. But again, the rug was pulled under.
Well, many of them woke up one morning and the air support and the logistical support and the intelligence and the reconnaissance and all the things that we had been providing with a very minimal force were gone. And so I think that probably has more to explain why there was a collapse than the unwillingness to fight. As you said, they've lost 2,500 the last year, and the United States has lost none. So it's clear that they've been on the front lines.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know you're involved in an organization, Canopy Northwest Arkansas, that focuses on resettling refugees and helping them get integrated into society. Tell us a little bit about that organization.
So, Canopy Northwest Arkansas started in 2016 in response to the refugee crisis and at that time Syrian refugee crisis. And so it's a grassroots movement that started here in Northwest Arkansas, and since its inception we have resettled more than 200 individuals.
So you've had over 200 refugees resettled. Are most of those here in Northwest Arkansas today?
Yeah, Fayetteville, Springdale, and Rogers these
And what kind of success record have you had with these immigrants? Have they gotten jobs, and are they paying taxes? And
yeah, and I think one of the perception people have about refugees is that they're a burden. Let me clarify something, that when a refugee arrives here, they have 90 days of assistance, minimum assistance, and then after that there's no more. So within that 90 days, our small team works to make sure that they are fully employed, and they are. Within 90 days, a family, whether it's 1 or 6 or 10, they're fully self-sufficient within 90 days. So, and these are hardworking people that I get inspired by, and I'm an immigrant to the U.S., but I'm inspired by these wonderful folks who.
Tell me a success story of one of them that you can think of that has either succeeded in his career, his occupation, or has contributed to the area.
Do you have time for 200 stories?
From an Arkansas government standpoint, I am going to encourage the governor and the legislature to do what we can do to take steps to make it possible for some of these refugees and people, interpreters and folks who have stood with us, to have a home here in Arkansas. If people want to help, you guys will help them find out how they can be useful.
Yeah, come and follow us at our website or on our Facebook, and we will continuously are updating about the needs and how you can get involved.
Well, I think that's the main thing I wanted to get across today, and I thank you for helping us share this message, because the fact is there are a lot of people who want to help. There's a lot of people who want to fight about the whys and throw the blame, but there are a lot of people who want to help. And you have an organization, even though it may be focused in Northwest Arkansas, people all across this state who want to help. The only organization that I know of that is resettling refugees here can help, and you'll be willing to do that. There's lots of different ways, and you've went through those, and I hope that people will take advantage of that, because I know Arkansas is a caring people, Arkansas is a welcoming people, and there's a way for us to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So thank you for sharing that with us today. Thank you for coming and sharing some experiences that I know are not pleasant and sometimes painful to think about, the friends that you have and what they're going through. But I appreciate you coming, and I hope it'll help all of us be part of the solution.
Yes, thank you. And I'm grateful to be a resident of the state that is known for hospitality, Southern hospitality.
I hope we keep that
up. If you think of any veteran who worked or aid workers in Afghanistan, ask them about Afghan hospitality.
Oh, you've shown that to me with the coffee at your place. It was amazing. So I've experienced that firsthand.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.